Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, or whatever time this reaches you. Welcome to another edition, to another conversation of coronavirus and grief in the BMA community. I am AC Mbeng and I am your host. Today is the third episode of our conversation, which we've been looking at coping with grief as a result of coronavirus um, during this pandemic, and also we've been discussing some of the effects of grief on individuals. Today, we are going to look into the effects of grief on our mental health and well-being. They say grief can impact on our lives in many ways. One loss can lead to another and another, creating a ripple effect that drains us of our physical, emotional, social, and even spiritual well-being. So, like I said, you are all welcome to the third episode of our conversation on coping with coronavirus and bereavement in the BME communities. And our guest speakers today, we have LJ, we have Christiana, we have Eposi Ziton, we have Georgiana. You are all welcome to this episode today. And it's a pleasure having all of you. And we are really happy that you sacrifice your time to be with us today so we discuss this very important topic that affects each and every one of us in so many ways, because it is said that grief is different. Grief is as unique as each and everyone's fingerprint. So we all grieve differently, but it is something that is inevitable. And for the purpose of our discussion, we are going to look at the effects of grief on our mental health and well-being. So our focus on grief is grief as a result of the death of a loved one because of coronavirus. So I am going to dive straight into getting our guest speakers so they introduce themselves, and I will start with you, Eposi. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm very impressed to be a part of this forum, to have this conversation on coronavirus effect on the human body. Well, today, I'm going to say once more that I've been on the show before, but I'm Eposi Ziton. I'm the host of Spending Quality Time. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I study sociology and anthropology, women's studies, and nursing. I have a platform that I talk about everything. I talk about hot topics in our community, fashion and style, home decoration, food preparation, and presentation. So I'm a motivational speaker. So this is a good forum for me to motivate and encourage others. Well, thanks again for having me as a part of this show.
Thank you so much. And over to you, LJ, for your introduction.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me over the show. This is my second time of attending the show. I am LJ. I'm a resilience coach. I'm also a registered social worker with some experience, extensive experience, actually international experience in Finland and in the UK, where, I have about, 13, 15 years professional experience working as social services coordinator with adolescents and as a unit resettlement manager, where I work with unaccompanied minor asylum seekers and refugees with the Finnish immigration system. I have some knowledge and expertise in providing life-changing support to young people. My current role is a case manager with the youth offending team in the southern part of England, where I work with young people aged 10 to 17 who have become involved with the criminal youth justice system. So you can see that I have a tremendous passion for supporting young people and their families to ensure that they thrive and flourish by making a conscious, deliberate, determined effort. So I strongly believe that the battle is in the mind. Hence, one of my favorite quotes is, when life knocks you down, you better land on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. That's from Les Brown. So I think this is the right platform for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on our studios today. Over to you, Christiana, and welcome.
Thank you very much. I am Christiana Ikome. This is my first time coming on the show, and I'm very excited to be here to support the mission and vision of Rainbow Care. I am originally from Cameroon, in Southwest region, Boya to be precise. I have been in the United States. I reside in the United States. I've been in the US for more than 10 years, to be generous. I am a family nurse practitioner, licensed and credentialed by the American Academy of Nurse Practitioner, ANP, and the American Nurse Credentialing Center, ANCC. I also hold a postmaster's certification in psychiatric medicine and working on my doctoral program in my doctoral certification in leadership, nurse leadership. Again, I am really excited to be here, and I hope that my contribution will, help further the mission of Rainbow Care. And I'm willing to learn from you all. Seems like you're experts in your field, and I hope that the viewers will also learn from all of us.
Thank you so much. We are glad to have you on our show today, and we hope to have you again next time. Over to you, Georgiana. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you again. I'm excited to be here on this platform. My name is Georgiana Koko, and I've been in the United States for over 20 years. I've been in healthcare for that 20 years, but 10 years plus been in oncology, where by living. Those platform today is great for COVID in particular, but I've a lot of experience with people with cancer, and you know how they go through it. I'm an acute care nurse the past 10 years plus. And before migrating to United States, I also hold a bachelor's degree in law from the University of Yaoundé. I'm so pleased to be here to share my knowledge with my fellow Cameroonians, whoever stumbles on today's message, and to support the BAME community as a great group of me being one of those who was hit COVID when I lost very different to me. So I'm willing to learn from everybody, and I hope I'll be able to make my own contribution from my experience from COVID. Thank you again very much for having me, and thank the organizers of the Rainbow Care program to support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and you're welcome once more. If you are watching live from Facebook, and also we are streaming live on YouTube as well. In the course of listening or watching to this program, you may be affected in one way or the other. And if that happens, there's a number on the screen, and there's also a link to the website, and also there's an email address for you to contact to be signposted to maybe to a charity organization or to professionals who can help you if you feel that you are struggling, especially as far as grief is concerned. Sometimes they say grief comes in waves, and you may not know what will trigger those emotions to crop back. So that's a number on the screen. I will be putting the number there occasionally in case you need it. Then you contact the number, you call, or you send an email. So today, as I mentioned earlier, our topic today, we are looking at the effects of grief on our mental health and well-being. And we have divided our discussion today into 4 different parts. So into the physical effects of grief, we've also divided it into the emotional or the mental effects, social effects, and spiritual effects. So we will start. I'm going to start with LJ, where he will be able to look at the emotional or the mental effects of grief. Over to you, Jay. You ready? Over to you. Oh, connection. Okay.
We're having connection problem.
All right, there's a connection problem. Is that okay now?
Yeah, I think I lost the last couple of sentences you said.
All right. So I said over to you. So you'll start with our discussion on the emotional and the mental effects of grief.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank
Okay.
you. Grief can impact, our lives in many ways. One loss can lead to another and another, creating a kind of, ripple effect that can drain you of your physical, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being. So I'm going to focus on the emotional part, as the host has indicated. First of all, emotionally, you experience some deep and ongoing sadness. In other words, depression and emptiness
Mm-hmm.
when you are in grief, right? Now, what does this mean? It means that the feelings, they tend to to come really hard when you come to terms with the death of a loved one, right? And although this can be the toughest time, it's also when a lot of healing can take place. After this period, after the deep and ongoing sadness, people tend to feel better and are able to plan ahead. So sadness is a common response to bereavement. But if it persists, as we all know, it can progress into depression. So um, um, people are highly recommended to consult, their GP for further advice. Secondly, anger. That's an emotion, and it you may feel angry at the thought, just the thought of your loved one, the thought of the loss of your loved one, I beg your pardon, or the
Yeah.
lack of understanding from other people, right? You may be really angry about it. You could even be angry at yourself because you didn't have the time to say the things you really felt, or you may feel angry at the person because you begin to realize that, hey, they have left you alone. So the emotional part of it, anger is part of the emotional part of grieving. And all of these feelings are normal. The one thing you should not do is to bottle them up. That's the one thing you should not do. Of course, it's always easier said than done. When you are in that state, your thought process is a bit, it functions a little bit different from when you are in a otherwise happy moment. So counseling or coaching can offer a private space to explore the anger you're feeling with the aim of resolving it, right? And it always helps to talk to someone about how you're feeling. Now we've talked about, anger. The next one is fear. You see, your world at this point of grieving has become, you know, it's been turned upside down, I would say. So fear and anxiety, they they are perfectly natural feelings to experience in such moments. And um, you may feel like you don't even have any control over your life anymore. But as time goes on, you will get used to coping. Um, which in turn will make you feel more confident. So if your fearful thoughts and anxiety are persisting, again, talking to someone can really help. And if you're struggling to talk to your loved ones, or you feel like you have no one to talk to, you may benefit from speaking to a professional, right? Another thing about emotional impact of grief is numbness. I think I won't touch into that because it's likely that one of our speakers may have something to say about numbness, which is closely related to the physical aspect. Um, but also it's emotional. And then you feel lonely. There's loneliness and emptiness. And then there's resentment. These are all what you experience. Then there's confusion and even a loss of interest in the things that you used to do, the things that used to bring you pleasure. These are all emotional impacts on your well-being when we are looking at grieving. So there's also persistent feelings of worthlessness, right? And extreme hopelessness. So we are talking about the emotional part. We are talking about the well-being, your emotional or mental well-being. Um, then we have insomnia, or if you like, wakefulness, the loss of sleep. At night, you find yourself, staying late, early hours in the morning. You are still awake. It's 3 a.m. You're still awake. 4 a.m. You're still awake. You see, and of course, there's the loss of appetite. all of this has an impact on your emotion. So sometimes people also withdraw from others to cope with their grief or to avoid negative judgment, right? Most importantly, there's this part, the increase in blood pressure and the risk of blood clots. Perhaps this is also another part of the discussion that is yet to come up. So intense grief can alter the heart muscle so much that it causes what is known as the broken heart syndrome. Broken heart syndrome. It's a form of heart disease with the same symptoms as a heart attack. So obviously, stress links emotional and physical aspects of grief. Um, yeah, when you're grieving, your brain is on overload with thoughts of, sadness, loneliness, and all the ones I've listed, and many other feelings. So grief, your brain is being affected in a way that it even affects your memory, it affects your concentration, it affects your cognition. So your brain is focused on the feelings and symptoms of grief, which leaves little room for your everyday tasks. So what can it lead to? It can lead to increased risk of long-term emotional and mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and substance misuse. Sometimes people tend to find inappropriate means of coping with their grief, like substance misuse. So the result of unresolved, say, emotions like anger and resentment has a lasting effect on our psyche and can really affect us in ways unimaginable. And emotional impact is the most important part, which I really, really want to focus on, is you may begin to harbor suicidal thoughts. And that's very, very serious. That's self-explanatory when you start thinking about, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose? Why am I even living? So that's an advanced stage of your grief. It's important to talk to a loved one or your GP. So I'll give the room to others to also, add anything to what I've said.
All right. Thank you so much, Jay. And yes, true. When you've grieved maybe for too long or extended grief, yes, you may start to have suicidal thoughts, which may stem from you are looking at yourself. You don't see the reason for living. You start feeling worthless, and because you know that the loss you've endured, there isn't any other loss that can be worse than that particular one. Yes,
Mm.
on our next topic, fourth episode, we are going to look at complicated grief and beyond grief. What next after you've grieved, or what happens when the grief becomes complicated? Thank you so much for bringing that up. So any other person who has something to add to what Jay has said before we move on to our next speaker? Christiana, can I come to you?
Sure. So some really smart people who are called researchers have looked into grief and emphasized that there are certain things that um, affect your mind as well as your physical.
Yeah,
Um,
it's if you've got anything to add to what Jay
oh,
has said, yeah.
I think that he hit the point. He hit the point as expected because some of the things that he mentioned are some of the things that are physical that I was going to dive right into. So,
Okay.
okay. So I'm sorry. I thought maybe you just said to pick up from where he stopped.
No, that's fine. Let me get the others too, if there's anything they'd like to chip in. Eposi, do you have
I
anything to
mean,
add to what Jay has discussed?
Jay's just he hit all the points that in terms of the physical, he has said everything already. But
Thank you.
physical is huh?
Emotional
Sorry.
and mental.
Right. But all of
Mhm.
that is interwoven. I mean, there's
Right.
no way you can talk about one without
Mm.
bringing the other inside. So everything we're
Mm.
All
talking
right.
about is kind of correlated.
Mm.
All right.
So
That's
for the
fine.
most part,
Georgiana.
he did the best he could.
Okay. Georgiana, anything to add to that before we move on to the next
No,
discussion topic?
Gabe hit all the key points that he was supposed to, and by the time you hear from all of us, then you'll be able to realize that it is just one bundle that we're trying, one cake that we're trying to split. So thank you.
Okay.
Mm,
That was a beautiful presentation.
Thank you
thank
so
you all.
much.
Thank you.
So that takes us to our next speaker, which we all know that when grief stays for too long, it becomes physical. It took me a very long time to know that, yes, true, it becomes physical, and you start having this unknown body pains from nowhere. So I'm going to get Christiana to talk more about this. And thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolutely. So I was talking earlier and said that group researchers have found out that largely how we think determines how we feel, right? And that cognitive distortion, like when something is going on in your brain, it literally affects your behavior and how you act. Uh, part of the emotional, part of the physical. Like one of the other speakers said that it's hard to distinguish these two because they're kind of like interwoven. Our
Mm,
body systems work in sync, which means that they keep each other in check and balances, if I may say that, because all the systems, the cardiovascular, neurology, GI, respiratory, all work together. So if the brain has an issue, or if somebody that, and that's why if somebody touches you, your brain tells you that you have a touch. Um, and so you have that sensation. Likewise, if there is a problem, an emotional problem, all these body parts go into like an arousal mode, and
mm,
researchers feel like um, they can cause cognitively like memory impairments, confusion, poor concentration. Your reasoning can be down. Uh, you might be cooking and you just forget that you were cooking because somebody called you on the phone to tell you something. The ability to multitask is impaired. Your focus is also kind of like impaired. You feel like you're out of your body, to put all this in a nutshell. And then you can have headaches, tension headaches, or maybe feel dizzy. So part of the brain, as the other speaker had mentioned, that is really critical and that controls our hormones. Most of our hormones are, it's like the limbic system. I um, I don't want to use a whole lot of terms, but you know, the limbic system is made up of other like parts like the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, the amygdala. Those are the areas of the brain that really make us feel the way that we feel when it comes to regulating emotions. So when your body goes into this surge of neurotransmitter increase and hormonal increase, especially your stress hormone, homeostasis is off balance. Homeostasis is just like the internal environment. Remember when I said that your systems all work together in sync. So when someone is grieving, all of this kind of feels out of place. As a result, you can have anxiety, like the other speaker said, worriness, muscle tension, hyperarousal, sleep disturbance, restlessness. When it comes to respiratory, some people have um, shortness of breath when they hyperventilate. In the course of hyperventilating, the oxygen supply to our brain is cut off. Sometimes people pass out. I know where I come from in Cameroon, I said that earlier, when sometimes people pass out when they really hear a really bad message about the death of a loved one. They literally go have a syncope, and then they pull them out and say and begin to find the person because of all this surge of hormones that are just going out of whack because of the the message or the grief and the abruptness of hearing about the loss of our loved one. Then it goes to the heart. The heart, like the other speaker said earlier, blood, the heart muscles get because of the inflammation. The first thing that researchers point out that affects our system is the inflammation. Because of the inflammation, that's why all of these things are going like out of control, out of balance. So the inflammation can cause our heart to start contracting such that you feel like your heart is going to pump out of your chest. I know that for a fact. When I lost my dad so many years ago, I literally felt like my heart was broken, like it was going to come out of my chest. And researchers again say that for someone who does not have an underlying, that is a pre-existing heart condition, they are like 21 times more likely to have a cardiac event. It could be just feeling dizzy or feeling uh, woozy. And some of them, sometimes they say, oh, just sit down here and rest because you hear this sudden news or message about the love of the death of a loved one. And then the broken heart syndrome, I know he mentioned that also, which mimics like heart attack, the real heart attack. And the person experiences chest pain and shortness of breath. Again, this shortness of breath can cascade to where the person may pass out or have syncope. And then the worst one that I really hate is the GI. Have you ever had someone tell you some bad message and you just go to the bathroom like you want to pour out your whole stomach? So that is one of the effects of the surge of the hormone and the inflammation. Because remember, a neurotransmitter like serotonin is mostly in the GI system. So you feel stomach upset. It feels like there are bees in the stomach. You feel queasy and the feeling of nose, like you're nauseated. So this is some of the physical signs that that hit you almost immediately. Again, these signs are normal and expected within the first 24 hours to maybe the week. But if they exceed, there's no timeline. Again, everybody grieves differently. So it is hard to say, okay, you should monitor these signs and that. But when it begins to interfere with your personal life, then it becomes concerning. Again, different people grieve differently, but some of the things that really affect us are also dependent on how we perceive those. And I know somebody else may address that later on. So overall, your immune system is depleted, and you feel tired. You have your body aches. There's systemic inflammation. The sleep is disturbed. There is mood swings, risk for depression, and drugs for sure, which is a real big problem right now, worldwide, I guess. Exhaustion, fatigue, dehydration. I mean, the list is so long. I can keep going on and on and on, but I guess we get the point. So I would let others contribute to, and share probably their experiences when it relates to what they have experienced in terms of pain.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Christiana. And I was quite impressed that you mentioned grieving. So grieving basically affects every part of our bodies. You talked about the GI, you talked about the respiratory system, you talked about the brain. It basically affects the whole human being. And if we are not careful, if it's not sorted, then it may cause further problems. Thank you so much for the way you've discussed it, and I'm really impressed. And if anyone has questions to ask our guest speakers, feel free to pop them down in our comments section, and then we will ask the questions towards the end of our show. And you are welcome once more in this conversation where we are looking at the effects of grief on our mental health and on well-being. We've already looked at the emotional and the mental effects, and we've looked at the physical effects of grief on our well-being, which were really, really explicit. The way our guest speakers explained it, it's really quite understandable. So we are going to move over to our next guest speaker, and that will be Georgiana. Georgiana, I would like you to look at to discuss the social effects of grief. Yes, grief also affects us socially. We all know that when you are grieving, you can reach that point in your life where you don't see meaning in your own self, and not to talk of those around you. You lose interest in some of those pleasurable things that you used to like. So I would like you to discuss more about the social effects of grief, Georgiana, and thank you once more.
I thank you also again for having me on this show or on this panel. And like we said, I healthcare for 2 years plus, and my approach to everything is holistic, right? We look at the whole picture. And if you take from where our first speaker spoke about the emotional and mental up to the part of the physical, you know, the social part is also like plays a very big role in it. Work in an oncology, and you know what it is. I tell patients, you can see patients with good support system, they do better in their recovery stage than those who do not have system. With the COVID, the grieving is even worse. The importance of a support system is way above everything because it came so sudden, right? So it is not like those type of situations where you were prepared that this person may be dying and then you prepare your mind. But with COVID that came so suddenly, it will cause more of the social effect than when it is something that was expected. So what are the some of this effect of the social effect of grieving, especially the COVID setting, is that aspect of so people when they are grieving, they just decide to isolate. You don't want to talk to anybody. You don't want to see that is you just cut off from your community. And that I like to talk with my own experience. It happened to me when I knew that my girlfriend that I just spoke to visited a few weeks had died of COVID. My age mate, and I was looking at it. So I decided I cut off from my friends, from everybody, just turn off my phone. And at that moment, that was when all these psychological thoughts were coming into me, all these physical effects like Christiana was saying, and emotional from Jay, and I was lost. So I would say that with one of the key to this social effect is that uh, um, idea of you trying to isolate yourself. And that is where I think this BAME community grieving support group comes in to fish out those people that you feel that are they in that stage of isolation. How do we reach out to them? To me, my friends flew from out of state and they were like, you know what? We cannot let you stay here because the way you're not picking up your phone, you are one of those who call all the time. So they were there to support. How is the other way that grief, the social effect of grief, it's like you neglect yourself. You are a social you are that type of person that like to dress up, right? But you just decide that no, I'm not going to dress up anymore. You know, you see somebody, and I see that also in my in the cancer center where I work. I'll have a patient that came who that we knew, and during the treatment, as the treatment gets worse and they're realizing that, oh, things are getting bad, they don't care anymore about themselves. They just neglect themselves. They don't comb their head. They don't, they don't even take a shower. And you're like, okay, this is not a person that we know. And what do we do at that stage? we call on our social worker and we say that, there is a change in this person. I think he needs social support. So support groups are very important to handle this social effect of grieving. The other part that comes in when somebody is the social effect is, they stop which population still they stop attending, doing the things that interest them, or they overdo it. Okay, for some people who like to shop, when it gets to that a grieving stage, and they want to feel that is they are really down, they end up spending more than they were supposed to, and they end up in a lot of debts because you just sit there at home, especially in the days of COVID. You just need to click a button, and whatever you want is at your door, is taken from your credit card. Those of us in diaspora also, and for others, they just don't spend anymore, even for the stuff that you see. So they don't have interest anymore in the stuff that they like. And all of that adds up into what we were talked about, the mental and the emotional, that puts them into depression. And then from the depression, you go to suicide. So it's like a negative, the negative feedback loop. It just goes round and round until these people have support. In our community, Africans, say in Cameroon, if you lose somebody so dear to you, what happens? Your community comes together. They are in your house. I've lost a lot of people in my life. I'm not going to list them here, but I know I lost one person very special to me by car accident. And by the time I woke up, my house was full. People were there. They stayed for almost 3 weeks with me to make sure that I'm well taken care of. In the diaspora, it's difficult. Everybody is working. So that's why having platforms like this that support people, that give phone numbers, please call me, talk to me, because at times you just want somebody to talk to at that moment, and all of your friends are busy. So I always still want to applaud the organizers of this platform, and also the creators of the BAME Community Support Group, to encourage those type of groups even in our community, so that we can be there for one another when they are going through difficult moments like grieving in the COVID pandemic. So the social part goes back to the community. How does the community support you? You need your community by you at this time, when you cannot speak, when you cannot even do grocery, when you cannot even cook for yourself, when at times it's even difficult to drive to work. So all of those are what constitute the community, the social effect of grieving in the COVID pandemic for me.
Thank you so much, Georgiana. And that was really brilliantly explained. Yes, that's how grief affects us socially, and that's how it has basically affected each and every one of us during this COVID pandemic. Just with the social isolation, it's already a problem. And to discuss the support that's needed as a result of being socially isolated, or as a result of the social effects of grief on our mental health or on our well-being, we are going to look at that the last episode, which is the 5th episode, where we are going to concentrate on what support is out there for everyone who has been affected by grief. So we are going to move on, or we are going to ask if anyone here has something to add to the social effects of grief. Anyone, feel free to speak. If not, and then if not, we're going to start with, we're going to continue with Eposi. Now, one thing that happens when people are grieving is there's a spiritual being where we tend to blame a lot. We tend to lose interest in him. We lose faith in him even. I would like Eposi to discuss that with us today. The title that was given to you last week. Yes, you are spiritual. So over to you, Eposi, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Well, spiritually, I'm going to first of all go to the post-COVID era. You know, post-COVID, we all had this communal life. We go to church, we are in church groups, we work on a spiritual self, like those who do the Zen, those who just, you know, do a lot of meditation with groups. You know, there was a lot going on post-COVID. When COVID started, everything went to a lockdown, total shutdown, which means that this whole communality just died. Churches were closed, all of these setups that were like a support system for us were all out of touch. Kids could not even go to school where they socialize with their friends. You know, they share their own pain. And, you know, when we talk about grief, let's not forget, grief is not only you grieving because of the death of somebody. We're talking about a change of your normal, a total imbalance. You know, so when we talk about the post-COVID era, we did not have all of that. People were good. But when COVID came, people started just feeling like their normal has just fallen apart. People started grieving. That's why when we talk about grief, you know, some people just look at it about, you know, the loss of humans. No, there was a total loss of a normal status quo. You know, we changed from the normal things that we did. And that's why last week we talked about the linear pattern of grieving. Of course, it's not going to be the same because, you know, the fact that everything had just went to a standstill, people had already started grieving. Some people lost their jobs. Some people, you know, could not socialize. The kids could not go to school. So the grieving process had already started. The anger, the denial, and all of that pattern had already started. Well, when we talk about spirituality, sometimes you can look at it either way. You have some people that tie spirituality to religion. That's why I talked about churches being closed. People cannot go to their church groups, socialize from that religious aspect. And then you have people that spirituality is their own inner, searching their own inner soul, you know, and that's why we talk about things like meditation. That's their way of spiritually being connected to that supreme being. You know, so my thing about spirituality is that the other people have already talked about all the biological and all of that, but guess what? The human body is a whole, which means that we talk about being holistic, like all the parts of the human body has to be together for you to be healthy. So spiritually, when people started losing family members, some people did not lose one. Some people lost a lot of family members in one household. It just broke their whole belief system. It affected them spiritually to a point where they started asking questions like, is God real? Does he really have my back? Is there a supreme being, or is it just an imagination? Because it's almost like, why my family? Why me? Why my mom? Why my dad? You know, people just became, totally disoriented and disconnected with that whole spirituality. And for those who connected spirituality with churches, it was even worse because you couldn't go to your church superior, who was maybe the intermediary between you and your supernatural being. Now you can't even go to them for consolation, for support, for guide. So it brings you to that place of looking for other ways to cope. And people kind of forget about religion at some point, especially those who are going through anger, denial, depression. They started saying, you know what, there's no God. I'm going to go into other ways of coping where I can deal with my loss. And they started going into alcoholism, drugs. And I tell you what, the mental health department have to recruit a lot of mental health workers because they have a lot to do. You have a lot of people who are mentally distraught. They cannot even cope because they don't even know how to handle themselves since they've lost that spiritual touch. But like I say, it can go either way. You have some people who have never been spiritual. They just live their lives day by day. They just assume that the world is just like we see it. And when the COVID hit, and they started losing their family members, their friends. And for those that started feeling guilty, because some people have been blamed by families like, oh, you're the one who is socializing, you brought COVID to the household. Because I tell you what, with COVID, you have people that did not even believe that it exists. You even have people today, especially with the media frenzy and all the conspiracy theories that are out there, you have people that don't even believe that COVID exists. And that's why people like us who are motivational speakers, we go out there to tell people it is real. We do our research. We read all the media information out there, and we pick out what makes sense. And we come back and tell our viewers that trust and believe it. follow the CDC protocol because COVID does exist. So when we come back to the spirituality, you have those who, after they started losing family members, they sat and said, you know what? I think this does exist. And they started feeling guilty, like maybe it's me who caused it. Maybe I didn't do enough. Maybe there's something I should have done to save my family member or to rescue the situation. So they started finding consolation by attaching themselves to that supernatural being. All the living a life of, well, it's day by day, they started saying, no, there must be something bigger than me. There must be something that is unique that I need to hold on to, so I can better deal with this crisis. I can better, understand why things have happened the way they've happened. I can better know how to handle myself, because I always say that with all the mental and psychological ripple effects of COVID, you have to help yourself. You have to know how to manage and cope with all the issues that are going on. Mentally, physically, you need to know how to handle it. If you have to be writing journals, just be writing, just to help you spit out your thoughts. Because again, you can't have friends coming around as they will normally do. You have to figure ways of coping. And talking about that, it comes to my situation. Saturday, when I was having the show with you all, I was in a very bad shape because my aunt was buried like a few minutes before the show started. So I was in that space of defeat, worthlessness, anger, just almost losing touch with my supernatural being. But I sat and said, you know what? Everything happens for a reason. And that's why I like the foundation right here, which says rainbow, because there's always a light underneath the tunnel. There is a light. Sometimes we are so depressed and so out of ourselves that we don't even realize that. The supernatural being, if you believe in him, you're going to understand that we came here for a reason. We are here for a reason, and we're going to just do what he wants us to do. And when time is up, we are out. So that's what gave me that inner peace. Because when we talk about grieving, we're talking about how you can find that inner peace of acceptance. So with me going through all of these emotions, I had to say, you know what? This is bigger than me. And who is this person that I can lean onto? Is God, because I'm a believer. My spirituality is connected to religion. So I could connect and say, you know what, God, you need to come into me so I can understand that you have a bigger purpose for all of us. And that's what I gathered. So the next day was Valentine's Day. Guess what? I was doing Valentine things with my husband. I was out there empowering my views because I have a lot of people that are following me. I'm their role model. I'm their guide. So if I don't show them that you can grieve healthily, how are they going to get past their issues? That's why you have these platforms. That's the reason for this show that we're doing right now. Somebody out there can watch us and learn how to manage their stress, learn how to understand the human existence. And even though we have all the biological stories that they're telling us, they can realize that God is the biggest scientist. Everything we're talking about, the breakdown of the GI, the breakdown of the brain and all of that, it was all put together by God. He goes to that place where he touches all those areas in our bodies, and we find him and understand that as long as we are with him, we're going to know that there's a purpose and a reason for everything that happens, and we can grieve healthily. But that notwithstanding, all the support systems that Georgiana, Christina, they've mentioned, and all the biological activity that takes place, that's the truth. That's what happens. But at the end of the day, if you hold on to that superpower, you can be able to deal with it in a healthy manner, where your immune system, because guess what? From all the literature that I've read on COVID, your immune system is what keeps you at a different level from others. So if you grieve so much that you lose yourself, before you know it, you're going to either have some other kind of breakdown physically, and that might also put you in a position where when this virus come your way, you're not going to be one of those that is talking about, I'm going to be a survivor, because your system is already broken. So with that being said, all I'm going to say today to those who are watching is that please know that there's something bigger than you. Know that there's a reason why things happen, and always try to find the silver lining in every cloud. That's what I'm going to say for right now.
Thank you so much for that. And that was really well explained. Thank you. And yeah, they normally say God cannot help those who cannot help themselves. So you definitely have to work around your mental health, your the social part of it, the physical part of it, and then you look up to God. So I think they are all interwoven, as someone said in the beginning. They cannot work in isolation. So all of them work together. Thank you so much, everyone. And if you're still watching, you can still share, you can still invite your friends to watch. And like I said at the beginning, there's a number which I shared. If you think you are struggling after watching this program as a result of grief, there's a number to contact. There's a contact number here. I think that is it. Yes, there's a number to call, there's an email, and there's also their website, where the Rainbow Charity website, where you can actually go to for more information, and also the phone number to be signposted to charities or to organizations or to individuals who can actually help you during your grieving period. So we have questions from the audience, and I'd just like to acknowledge each and every one of you for watching and for interacting as well. It's really a pleasure, and this is really a very important topic, which it's not a topic which we really have to avoid, because it's something that happens to each and every one of us. Even if it hasn't happened, it will happen someday. So I really encourage everyone to be able to watch and share their views as well, or and share how what they've done during this period in to survive the COVID, to survive or to cope with grief. And like Abigail said, grieving generally is not all about the loss or the death of a loved one. We grieve so many things. We grieve maybe the diagnosis of a lifelong illness or a disability or a divorce. We grieve the loss of something or someone that we loved. So we are going to look at the questions from the audience, and one of them, I'll send this question towards you, Eposi. One of them is religion how can religion or belief systems help in grief management?
Well, just like I said earlier, for those who are believers or for those who are attached to some kind of a denomination, a lot of those people have their superiors. They have support groups. Some people belong in church choirs. Some people belong in church exercise groups. All of that support system where people have a common belief of a supreme being. All of that helps to guide you. And it helps you also to have all your unanswered questions answered, because somebody is there for you to say, please, this is what I'm going through. Can you talk to me? Can you guide me? And I want people to realize that as much as the churches were closed, some churches are open, I know some are still closed, but we have all the outlets. A lot of those churches have different ceremonies that they do online. So you just need to connect. And people should not always think that because you are a Presbyterian or you are a Catholic, you cannot connect to another denomination that you think can help you. Because guess what? All these different denominations are going towards a common focus, which is helping people to cope and grow spiritually.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Jay, do you have anything to add to the question, please? Okay. Yeah.
So the question was, how can religion or belief system help in grief management?
Yes. Or generally the spiritual part of the spiritual effects of grief.
Okay. I think, it also ties with one of the questions that, is it Valentine again asked about how can the power of the mind be used? So I will always go back to the mind as the most important part of the body that when man was created, human being. When I say man, I mean human being. it is said that whatever the mind can conceive, the mind can achieve. So spirituality, um, you know, it also involves tapping into your mental reservoir. Because if we look at the part of spirituality where Eposi just mentioned, where you are searching your inner soul, searching deep into yourself, trying to find meaning, um, I think your belief system ultimately shapes your value system. So whatever you believe in, as
Mhm.
long as it is a belief such that you make a conscious, deliberate, determined effort to bounce back, to move from grief, to improve your situation. As long as your belief is geared towards that, your mind has already been programmed for that direction. And if the saying goes that whatever the mind can conceive, it can achieve, then your belief
Mhm.
system in that regard can help you overcome grief. Now,
Thank you.
permit me to just make a comment, or maybe go back to Eposi's presentation on spirituality, which is very,
Yeah.
very important. And thank you very much, Eposi. I appreciate the fact that you were grieving while the show was on, and you still participated. So well done. So I have been thinking when you were talking about spirituality, and my mind went to spirituality in terms of religion. And to be more precise, religion in this context, I'm referring to Christianity.
Mhm.
So let's go to the manual of Christianity, which is the Bible, First Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. First Corinthians 10, 13. I know this is not uh, but I can't help but look into that, which says, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. God will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, right? But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. Now, question: does God allow suffering? Why does God allow suffering? You see, whatever has happened to you, did God know that you'll be able to bear, to overcome that before allowing that to happen to you? Maybe that's another topic for discussion.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, obviously. Okay. That's food for thought. Obviously, that will be another topic for another day. Thank you so much for that additional info there, Jay. And I um let me see someone.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, over to you. I think you have something to add.
Yeah, I just to add something question how today was, right? Because grieving has another, as to me, I always look at life as a balance. There's always, like, we have the rainbow, there's always a silver lining in that rainbow or something that comes out. Grieving makes us to go back to the source. Where is my power from? And if you go back to the Bible again, I do not want to talk about the Bible because I, you know, I'm an elder, right? I'm an elder in my church, but here was not the forum to talk about God. But if you go to Matthew 5, 4, it tells us, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they are comforted." What does that tell us? If you are in that grieving mode, the Bible, God will help, will comfort those who mourn. So how does it help us? It helps us because in the Bible, God has said He can do more than handle. And again, He's telling us that He is there to bless those who mourn. So, and if you go to Psalm 59, it's telling you, blessed are those with contrite heart. So all of that, if you are and you tap into the Bible, that is where you have all your answers. I am one of those that live. My life is the Bible, and that is how I come most of my sleep. When life hits me real hard, I realize that I've maybe deviated from my original source. I go back to God. So that's all what I wanted to add. that the way that religion helps us in grief is digging more into the Bible, getting those scriptures that he himself has told us to hold on to. And the word of God goes out, it never comes back void. That's all I have to add. Sorry if I had to do
No,
too
no
much.
need to say sorry. That's really brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we all know, for those who are Christians, the Bible is actually it's a weapon that helps us, that can actually help. It helps us so much in times of difficulties. And I know we are in a diverse community, or where religion is actually supposed to be one of those things that everyone has to embrace. So I don't really think that if you want to talk about your something in the Bible, you really have to be saying sorry for it, because being diverse means we have to accept every other person's, or every other person's belief, whoever or whatever they believe in. And in this case, as a Christian, we believe in God. So you are perfectly all right. You're perfectly correct to talk about your God, the God that you worship, the God who has seen you through difficulties, the God who has actually seen us through our grieving moments. So thank you so much for that. Any other person has something to say? Christiana, do you have anything else to add?
Well, I think that the speakers have really um, brought so much light onto every aspect of this conversation. And
Okay.
you cannot overemphasize how important religiosity, spirituality is, because um, it's a very vital part of our being. I am a woman of Psalms. I love my Psalms. Um, when when I am distraught, when I feel like I'm not myself, which is like a lot of times, I just, commit to my Psalms. I love Psalm 23, um, 91, and, 64, Psalm
All right.
50, to change my heart. It's just, well, it depends on when I wake up in the morning. I just pick up with my Psalm 8. The first line is that, Lord, your majesty. Because if not for him, I wouldn't even wake up. So
All
I'm
right.
so grateful that we have this platform. So yeah, that's all I
Thank you
can
so
share.
much. Yeah, thanks a
Absolutely.
lot. There's another question on the screen. What, with lockdown measures in place, what more can you do to overcome social isolation? Anybody? We are open.
Yeah. So, because I spoke about the social effect with with
Just before you continue, please. Answering this question, we should be looking towards how does it affect us, because you talked about the social effects of grief.
Mhm,
Because if it's towards support, then that will be for our next discussion, for our next episode, either the fourth or the fifth.
mhm.
Okay.
So if you can be brief with the answer.
Yeah. So I feel that we can use the platform, right? There are so many
Mm,
before. Uh, I still give credit to the fact that technology has improved so much
yeah.
that you can still be in isolation, like I said before. If it was before, when somebody dies, my best friend died, I was there to see her buried, right? But I
Mhm.
could see everything on my, they could but live stream it. That is the way that we do it right now. You do FaceTime people, you connect with Google Meet, you have Facebook that could help you break that isolation that you are in. So even like in my church, like Eposi said, even though the building, we're not actually going to the church building, but
Mhm.
we are still connected. We are getting calls from our deacons, we are getting calls from the elders, from the pastor. So everybody is available. We don't really have to really come together because of the social distancing, but we can still connect through any of these platforms. That's what I wanted to say.
All right, that's fine.
Yeah,
Thank
don't
you so
feel
much.
alone because you cannot connect. We can do it through the social media platforms and phones and other platforms.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Our next question, still from the audience: how can you use the power of the mind to overcome grief? I will come to you, Jay, for that. We are already above 1 hour, so let's be brief, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Using the power of the mind to overcome grief. I think I made a comment there that whatever the mind can conceive, the mind can achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Now, while you are in grief, what are you thinking about? Are you going to make a conscious, deliberate, determined effort to get out of the state? When you do that, then you'll be able to begin to overcome grief slowly but surely. So one of my favorite quotes is, when life knocks you down, you better land on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. So I think using your mind and put it in a positive gear, using your mind in the right direction, that goes without saying that you can also use technology in an appropriate way. So just make a conscious, deliberate, determined effort that, listen, I can overcome this.
Well, thank you so much for that. So we are going to go to our last question for the day, because we are almost towards the end of our discussion now. So our last question goes to each and every one of you. So what are some of the signs that will show that one has worked through their grief? We all
Oh,
know
that's
that
that's
sometimes,
that's an interesting one.
yeah, but sometimes when people are struggling, as Jay said, um some people will hit the bottle, yes, to numb that feeling. Some
Mm.
will abuse drugs and so many other things. But what is it that people can do that you will think that, oh, this person has actually worked through their grief? Over to you, Jay.
I think the show itself is a living example. We have Eposi Ziton, who has lost a loved one, and that was just a week, and she's right here. So that tells me that she is recovering from grief.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you
Yeah.
begin to notice the recovery process. You begin to feel more emotionally stable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you start laughing more and start making jokes more with others, right?
Yeah.
And you begin to share funny memories about the deceased without feeling sad or crying. Then, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of holidays, holidays sometimes will be very overwhelming for someone who is grieving, but you start
Mm-hmm.
facing holidays without feeling lost, right?
Okay.
Then you have a ritual usually when we lose someone who is dear to us. This ritual may include visiting the cemetery, right, where the person is buried. So when you start forgetting that ritual and not feeling guilty about doing so, that's a sign that you are going towards recovery. And then
Mm-hmm.
also, you start feeling good about taking care of yourself. You start looking forward to the future. You start enjoying old activities, things that you temporarily gave up. You start enjoying them. And then you begin to develop even new activities and interests. Most importantly, is that the desire to help others will kick in. So you're desiring to help others starts kicking in. This platform, all of us have been bereaved in one way or the other. This strong desire for us to help others, the viewers, someone out there is going through grief. This desire is to tell you people that, listen, we are in the process of recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. And I saw Eposi nodding. I think you have something to add. And then after you finished speaking, we just round up, because we are already above 1 hour. Okay, Sir Eposi, over to you.
Last week I said I was the face of grief. This week I'm saying that an example of somebody who is recovering. I'm not going to say I've fully recovered, but I'm recovering. From
Mm-hmm.
what I've put on, you can tell it's brighter. Last week I had black, which could tell my state of mind. This week I'm wearing something brighter. I just spoke to my cousin, who is an only child of my aunt who died. She was smiling and laughing with me and telling me of things that my aunt did, and even suggesting things that we should do to keep her memory alive. That's to tell me that she is also recovering from the grief. Not fully recovered, but she's getting there. So what I wanted to say in general is that the way I have coped with grieving is going into my inner self, spiritually, mentally, and that has helped me to be where I think I am right now. Thanks so much for letting me express how I feel.
Thank you so much for that. Um, Christiana, do you have anything else to add? And then we round up the show.
Well, one thing that I wanted to point out is that of stigma, right? So when we have problems like grieving, as let's just stay on the topic, and we feel ashamed, mental health is one thing that people are not embracing. So stigma and trying to show that we are really strong, that we are holding up is a negative, because there is hope. There is hope. So it's best to not feel like you can just snap out of it and seek help. Also, when it comes to stigma, which is one of the reasons why people feel like they cannot share that they are vulnerable, I think that as a community, we need to talk about these things so we can learn and grow from and learn to support one another, as opposed to pointing fingers and not embracing the fact that yes, mental health is real and there's a real struggle. I think that's what I really wanted to throw out there.
Thank you so much. Yes, so we should be mindful of our mental health when we are grieving. Unfortunately, not everyone has the willpower, or not everyone is capable of speaking out when they are grieving. And that can also have its own negative effects as well. Sometimes we don't speak out because of the there's so much emotions, the pain, the anger, the shame, and everything that comes with grief. Sometimes we are also afraid of stigma because people may ask you, why do you grieve so much? Or and other statements, which we are not really going to focus on that. But when we are grieving, we should look forward to finding meaning in our grief. We should look forward to feeling better, to getting better, and looking forward to accepting that situation, to accepting that we've lost a loved one. Grieving is not a weakness. Being vulnerable is not a weakness. It is actually strength. So we come to the end of our show today. We are looking forward to our next episode next Saturday, same time, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. UK time. We are sorry that our conversation today, our discussion was so interesting, was so powerful that we couldn't stick to time. Well, so you guys have a good weekend, and we will see you again next Saturday. And thank you once more for being guest on the show. Thank you. And
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
stay in the waiting room, then we talk. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.